Fletcher, and this is my camping adventure that I went on here at the end of the summer of 2020. Right at the end of August, I was driving home to Cape Breton. At least that was my plan. But I just got stuck in Halifax running a bunch of errands, and I didn't end up leaving the city until about 7 o'clock. And I decided that I ride a motorcycle, so I figured instead of riding in nighttime, driving to Cape Breton, about a 5-hour drive, I'm just going to go buy a new tent because I needed a new tent, and I'm going to go camping. I'll drive about an hour from Halifax and find a nice place to set up my tent. So the last errand I had to do was drop something off to my friend in Sackville, and the Beaverbank Road there heads directly to the Knoll Shore, which is just outside Truro. And I thought, perfect. It looks like rural there, right by the ocean. I've never been in that area before, so sounds perfect to me. So cruising down the Beaverbank Road, starting to get a little dark, starting to rain a little bit. So I'm getting a little antsy to get there and set up. And I finally arrived there, and I pull the bike over on the side of the road, and I can kind of see the ocean way off in the distance, maybe almost a kilometer away. So I kind of walk down over the bank, and it's all grass there. Even though it's getting dark, it's all like beach grass. But there was a couple things that were giving me a hint that maybe I shouldn't camp here. The first hint was that normally beach grass stands up nice and tall, but all this beach grass was very flat on the ground, which I thought was really strange, which made me think maybe the ocean comes up here. And so, but I thought, no, really just trying to justify it, looking for a place to camp, didn't want to relocate at all, So I was like, okay, I just touched the grass and just licked my finger just to see. And of course, it tasted very salty. So that was my red flag number 2, that perhaps the ocean comes up here. But I literally looked around everywhere. I live right by the ocean. I grew up in Cape Breton. That's why I was driving home by the ocean. So I know, like, when the tide comes in a little bit, it usually brings in driftwood or beach shells, all these things. And there was nothing. There was nothing there at all. And the other thing was that I saw sort of I'd say about 20 to 50 yards from where my tent was set up, this sort of ditch almost that went down about 15 feet, and it was all muck, and it was so I thought, like, that's probably where the ocean comes up. Maybe a little beach spray comes in on the grass or something like that. Again, just trying to justify everything, that this is an okay place to camp for the night. I was tired, so I just said, frig it, this is it, I'm going to set it up. And I did. And honestly, I didn't think too much about it. After that, I was tired, I was laying in my tent for a little bit, just on my phone for a minute and things like that, and just slowly drifted off to sleep, a really nice, deep sleep. And it was about 4 a.m, a dewdrop had fallen down and hit me in the forehead and woke me up. And, not a big deal. You sleep in your tent, condensation builds up in there, I didn't think too much of it. So I just rolled over. But the moment I rolled over was the instant I knew that something was drastically wrong. It was literally, my Aunt Karen used to have a waterbed, and that's literally what it felt like. It was like I was sitting on top of a bowl of Jell-O, because the moment I rolled over, it was just wiggling all underneath me, and all of those signs that I saw beforehand were clearly an indication that the ocean has come in. And at first I was pure panic, because I was like, it's pitch black, 4 a.m, at this place that I don't really know that well, and I'm thinking, like, I could be out in the middle of the ocean right now. I honestly have no idea. Like, I have no idea. Somehow this tent that I bought, this miraculous tent, was literally so waterproof that no water had come through at all. Like, it was a brand new tent that I just bought. I've always had tents that even just sleeping on damp grass, it seems like they comes through a little bit. So the fact that I wasn't full of the Cobequid harbor right now was pretty impressive. But I had to figure out, it's like, am I out in the middle of the harbor right now? Like, I got to figure this out. So luckily I do a little bit of meditation and stuff like that. So I calm myself for a second, and I was like, okay, use your senses. What's going on here? So I started to listen. Figured if I was out in the water, like, you'd hear the water a lot, but I couldn't hear it at all. But what I did hear was crickets. So I heard some crickets chirping in the background, and I fell asleep to crickets. So I knew that, okay, I'm probably in the same place. So at least I'm close to shore. And so the immediate threat of death disappeared because honestly, like, it was a scary moment there for a second. But so at least I calmed down a bit at that point, but I realized I was still in a sticky situation here. Like, what am I going to do? I need to get out of here. So I put my headlamp on and I just kind of look around. I'm still half asleep, still in shock of what's going on here. And I knew I need to make a like relatively quick decision. And just in my sleepy, dazed, confused situation, I really wasn't thinking straight. So the first thing I did was I grabbed my motorcycle helmet and thought, this is the best thing to start gathering my belongings in. So I put my phone in there. I put my wallet in there. I put my boots in there because I'm going to have to wade through the ocean now. I could tell because when I sat up, when I was laying down, I was floating perfectly. When I sat up, my bum sank down and it just kind of just gently bounced off the ocean floor or off this grass or whatever it was. And I could tell I was in about 2.5 feet of water. So I was like, okay, it's quite a bit of water. You know what I mean? So I could tell there's a bit of water out there. So I put my boots in my helmet and, you know, I was like, okay, I gotta try to get out here, you know? So like an idiot, basically, I unzipped the tent perfectly. Like the tent unzipped perfectly, but the moment I moved towards the tent sank down, the lip of the tent sank down below the ocean, and it literally just flooded my water. It was like a movie, you know, when you see like this dramatic car door open and the ocean comes in. It was literally like that. It was just like thank goodness it was only 2.5 feet of water, but you could only imagine the things I was saying as this was happening. Like, oh my, I was just in complete shock that what the hell is going on here? It's 4 a.m. out in this place. I don't know. Literally the whole Cobequid Channel enters my tent. My sleeping bag is I just had a blanket. I just had my comforter for my bed was floating. I had a nice new sleeping pad that I just bought that day as well was floating. My big book bag that I should have had on my back with my belongings in was floating in the ocean. Just completely not thinking straight at all in this moment. And the situation just got 10 times worse because now everything that I own is soaked. And not to mention, it was a warm summer's night when I went to bed, and I find it really difficult to sleep with any layers on, so I'm naked. I'm literally naked in this situation, in this tent, full of the water, and it's a shit show. It's honestly just a full-on shit show right now. Like, you know, I knew I wasn't going to die, so I really have this good ability that as long as I'm not going to die, then I know I can get through it. But I was like, God, I'm still in a situation here. Like, what am I going to do? And it was at that moment I remembered going to sleep. I kind of looked around for my motorcycle key and I couldn't find it. And I was like, oh, not a big deal. So I thought in that moment, if the motorcycle key is in here, like, I'm screwed because that's just going to float away. And I'm in the middle of nowhere, basically. Don't know anybody. I might not be able to get out of here. I was like, okay, hopefully my absent-minded ass left the key in the motorcycle. Just like fingers crossed that that's what happened. So I need to get out of the tent here. So I get out of the tent. I'm up knee deep in water now. The tent is like half sunk, half floating still. I didn't peg it down because it was so flat. It wasn't windy. All my stuff was in there. I was like, I'm not going to blow away, you know? So didn't expect I was going to float away potentially. So, but it was kind of lucky in one way because maybe the water would have got into the tent. If I did peg it down, it wouldn't have floated, right? So it would have actually probably went up to where the mesh part of the tent is and actually would have got me wet. It got in there anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. So here I am, naked, out here, 4 a.m, dragging my half-sunken tent back to shore, and it's not quite hitting me yet, but it's like, because I'm still in the middle of the situation, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is completely ridiculous. This is going to be a funny story someday, even though it sucks so bad right now. And I get up, I get close, so I get away, so I understand why this grass is all flat, because the ocean weighs it down. I get out of that part into the actual beach grass, and it's, as you know, beach grass is quite sharp, so I had to put a pair of pants on at that point. I ended up losing my blanket and my leather motorcycle jacket just because in the kind of, not the panic, but just in the confusion. And like they weighed like 50 pounds each. Like it was like a struggle to kind of climb up over the bank, and all I had was my motorcycle. So it's like, I'm not going to be able to lug these things up over the bank and get out of here anyway. So I start wringing out what I can. I had to take all the stuff out and basically dump all the water out, and then I was like, I got to get out of here. I knew Truro was pretty close. I didn't realize it was so far. It seemed way closer on the map. Like, it seemed so easy to get there. I was like, oh, it's just a 5-minute drive down the road, Google mapped it, said 40 minutes. And I was like, oh my goodness. And like all these back roads, I had no idea. So breaking down my tent basically just on the side of the road now. And again, it's 4:30 in the morning at this point in the middle of nowhere, but I think it's Friday night. So all of a sudden I see lights coming in, and I'm like, oh great, like somebody coming to save me, perfect. And then realize it's a car coming, and then I'm like, I look at my half broken down tent, I'm just in my pants, half my stuff is just scattered everywhere, so I'm just like, I don't want anybody to see me in this circumstance right now. So I panicked and grabbed all my stuff up and literally hid in the bushes, because I was like, I do not want to be seen in this situation. So, because I figured that was more embarrassing than anything. So I literally hid in the bushes. Car drives by, thank goodness. Get my tent packed up, all the stuff all packed up. Everything's completely soaked. All my clothes are soaked. But I had no other long sleeve shirt other than my jacket. So I put on a wet t-shirt and get on my motorcycle, and thank goodness I reached down and the key was still in the ignition. Like at all situations, leaving your key in your vehicle in the middle of nowhere is probably not a good idea, but it luckily, again, being absent-minded there for a second helped out. And I got on the motorcycle, and I had to start driving towards Truro, and I was like, I'm just going to get to the first hotel that I can find and just stay there for the night, because at this point now I'm frozen because I'm soaked to the bone. Little hyped up from the adrenaline rush of waking up on top of the Cobequid Channel area, literally, right beside the Bay of Fundy, where I know we have the highest tides in the entire planet Earth. You know what I mean? So it's like all these things that I should have known, I should have been aware of. But so I'm driving back to Truro now on all these windy roads, and it's so cold, and it's one of the most uncomfortable situations I've ever been in. And again, thank goodness I meditate a little bit, because that was the only way, doing some breathing techniques to get through this drive. And I eventually roll into Truro and stop in at the first hotel I find there. And clearly rolling in, the guy who checked me in was like, something, you just give me a funny look, as you would, like, this guy looks pretty roughed up, showing up in the middle of the night here. Like, you could tell he wanted to ask me about what was going on. But at this point, I was just so tired, so cold. All I was thinking about was getting in a warm shower and then just going to sleep, like getting a few minutes of sleep here, because like I was exhausted. So I was like, please God, don't ask me about what had happened, because I had no energy to talk about this right now. I was just completely defeated from the whole thing. Luckily he didn't ask too many questions. He's like, you got to check out in like 4 or 5 hours. I'm like, yeah, man, like I don't care, just like, let's go. So get up there in the hotel room. And honestly, it was probably, the best shower that I've ever had in my entire life. Just the warmth of that shower was, it was life-saving, honestly. And, I took my time. I took all my clothes out and hung them up all around in the hotel, and had probably one of the best 3 or 4 hour sleeps I've ever had in my entire life. That bed was so welcoming. Oh my goodness, let me tell you. And it was one of the crazy experiences of my life. Like, not gonna lie, like it sounds so ridiculous. Like, it sounds like a fairy tale or something you'd see in a movie. And like, anybody who knows me at all are just like, yeah, of course that happened to Grant. Like, that's just a classic Grant story, So I woke up the next day. I felt pretty well rested. Had to go make the drive back to Cape Breton. None of my stuff really was dried out yet. But it was a nice sunny day. I was on the road. The sun was shining. And I wasn't in the Cobequid Harbor anymore, so life was great after that moment. Yeah. It's funny. Well, it's not funny now. I still don't have my motorcycle back, but 3 days later, my motorcycle broke down in Cape Breton. But it was like, that doesn't even matter. Everything feels good now. That was nice and simple, It's like, this is not half as bad as waking up in the Cobequid Harbor unplanned at 4 a.m. So, it's funny how sometimes those happier moments in life can give you a perspective on things, and it really shook me up there. And that's my story. That's my crazy and campy story that I had. Quite the adventure, unplanned swim at night. Yeah.
Hey campers, that was episode 1 with Grant Hatcher. We want to thank Grant for coming. Grant is the owner of Balanced Trance Meditation, and he teaches class around the city, places like NSCC, Dalhousie, Mount St. Vincent. Check him out. And also keep your ears peeled for weekly episodes of Nova Campfire Stories, and if you have a story you'd like to share, contact us at hello@novacamp.ca. Thanks for listening.